National Republican parties are now suing the North Carolina State Board of Elections again.
Yeah, it comes just days after the board criticized GOP leaders for filing a lawsuit based on what the board calls false allegations about the potential for voter fraud. The new lawsuit filed this week claims that nearly 250,000 people were allowed to register to vote in North Carolina without proving their identity. It asked for a federal judge to potentially order the state to revoke all of those people's voter registrations. That would make them ineligible to cast a ballot in the upcoming election unless they re-register. Just last week, the North Carolina Republican Party and the Republican National Committee filed a separate lawsuit kind of along that same theme. Let's bring in Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes into this conversation. So Khalif, two lawsuits in about a week centering basically around the same thing. So in the solution that this lawsuit is seeking, is this even possible because we are so close to the election?
I think you hit it right on the head. It's not possible, and that's what the State Board of Elections is saying. They're saying that within the 90-day time frame, federal law prevents you from doing some mass type of wiping. And so if they're asking for this to be done, they as in the Republican National Party and the State Board of GOP, if they're asking for them to wipe folks wholly and have them re-register, that process cannot happen unless the court is ordering them to do something, which I still think may be problematic because you have federal law that exempts it. So I'm not sure where this one goes, but I do think this claim is significantly better than the first claim. I think that one was on its face, had a couple of defects in terms of the way that it was filed. This one is right on its head. They admitted to doing this. They admitted that their forms were not accurate, that they needed to update them, that 225,000 folks did not give a social security number or driver's license number, and because of that, there was a miss. But they also have a number of things for why and what could have happened. This doesn't mean that a person maybe didn't have a social security number or an identification. Maybe they didn't match, and when they don't match, they create this form. So they said those numbers are all kind of merged. That was their number one response. And they said even those individuals that would have went through that process still, before they were able to register, would have had to show some other ID. So it wouldn't have been just they were able to get, I don't have an ID, I don't have a license, I don't have a social security number, go ahead and register me. They still would have taken them through the process to submit some other type of identification before allowing them to register. That's what they responded to when they mentioned this in their complaint.
And I'm glad that we have you here. I have a lot of notes here in front of me because I needed to be able to understand the context of that. Let's bring up the 225,000 people that you're talking about. We're talking about the Federal Help America Vote Act. Specifically, what is that? That
is literally a voter, reform. In the wake of the 2000 election, you were trying to 2020 election, I say, trying to find ways to ensure that there was integrity in the process, specifically within systems. A lot of these electronic systems were being challenged. People were saying there was widespread voter fraud, and because of those issues, because of those challenges, they wanted to ensure that there was something out there being done to support this. And part of that was ensuring that individuals on the federal level had a registration, had social security number and identification when they were registering.
Real quick, is this happening just in we know we're in a swing state, right? Is this happening just in North Carolina, or is it happening in other states across the country?
Excellent question. This is part of our Republican National Committee's plan. Back in June, they announced this, that they would be mobilizing in key battleground states, poll workers and attorneys in all of those states. And you got to remember, Laura Trump is the co-chair, but Michael Whatley out of North Carolina is the other chair. And he said they lacked attorneys across the country, and that's why Trump lost the last election. It was his idea going forward to mobilize attorneys everywhere. And so, yes, you're seeing these lawsuits. There's lawsuits filed in Arizona, lawsuits filed in Michigan. These exact same type of lawsuits challenging the voter rolls and saying that there's widespread fraud in those states. So this is going right along what they talked about in June. I mean, now we're seeing it play out. And as they mentioned in their response, you waited 2 months before the election to file this. And if this was an issue, it should have been done within that 90-day time frame so they could have addressed it.
Anything we missed?
No, I think those questions are great. I mean, this is something that we're going to see popping up everywhere.
Okay, Khalif, appreciate it.